Hey everyone, welcome to November's live Q&A session. I was just writing my cheeky little description of today's session about how this is the Injured Athletes Club is the best club you never wanted to be a part of, right? However, maybe after today you'll change your mind about that. Maybe, it's not your first choice of club to be a part of, but is it possible to view that a little bit differently? And I know that's a challenge, especially for those of you that are just right in the midst of feeling distressed with your injury. And I am right there with you. So today, hopefully we'll have some people joining us. I know a few people were saying they wanted to be able to be here today. We'll definitely always set the precedent that your questions come first, but I usually come with a couple topics in mind just in case people aren't able to join right away, or you'll want to watch it later. So hey Cindy, yay! So some of you, thank you for those of you who answered the poll that I sent out. We're trying to, so Cindy and I are one of the things we wanted, her and I are going to do this year is to think through, like, how can we best serve you guys, and how can we really make sure that we're supporting you in the way that feels like is working for you and is beneficial for you guys. And so one of those things on that poll was, does it make sense to keep doing the live Q&A, or should we you can submit a question and I could do a short video answer, and maybe we'll do a little bit of both. So thank you. That's what everybody said. Why not a little bit of both? So thank you everyone for answering that poll. I appreciate it, and Cindy appreciates it as well. We love seeing you guys interact with each other and just reaching out for support and sharing your wins and sharing your frustrations. So it's great to have you all here and to see all of that interaction. So always remember to, if you know anyone else that's injured, or anyone else that would benefit from being a part of the group, definitely let them know about the Injured Athletes Club. And I tell them to ask to join the group, and we'll get them in here. So the first thing I was going to talk about today, as people start joining in, there are two things that, those of you who saw that post I had a couple things in mind for today. And one was I wanted to talk about dealing with setbacks. So during the course of your injury, it's common to encounter setbacks along that path, and what to do when that occurs. It can be really, really frustrating. And I was going to share my current frustrations with the setbacks. So the other thing we're going to talk about then is, if we have time, is also, like, how can you start? Is it possible to view your injury as a blessing instead of a curse, right? So Cindy and I have had the opportunity, as we have been working on a new book together about recovering from injury, and in particular the mental recovery of injury, looking at this idea of growth through a traumatic experience. And is it possible to shift how we feel about being injured on a more sort of global level? And does that then change what our experience is as we're going through it? So so as you guys jump in, let us know, put a little comment in the comment box and let us know that you're here, because I can't see as people join always. So, but if you put a comment in there, I should be able to see that. And definitely in the comments as well, let us know what questions you have right now. What are you struggling with? What do you want to share with the group? Anything that's burning on your mind in terms of what's challenging for you right now. So in dealing with setbacks, so, it's very common to have that occur at some point during your rehabilitation from an injury. And it can be, not only frustrating and devastating physically, but also mentally. It's really challenging when you feel that you're progressing and start to feel excited and start to feel like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and get excited to use your body the way that you want to use it again. And then to have a setback where you're, maybe you're not fully re-injured, but you have to back on your progress in order to take care of the setback that you have endured. And it can just be it can be challenging emotionally at that time. So we see, when athletes go through their injury process, there's two typical times where negative emotions will spike. And one is at the onset of the injury. So right when you get injured is a time where you feel sort of the most distress. And then the second time we see that happen is is feeling, as you get cleared for competition, there can be a spike in distressed emotions again because of fear of re-injury and feeling anxiety around that. But the other place I see it as well is when you encounter a setback. So I injured my arm playing volleyball in August. I think it was the end of August. And I took a good couple months off to let it heal and took care of it and started to, it was feeling strong again. And I decided to go do a couple yoga classes, and I think it just was not ready. And so I've had a bit of a setback. And boy, am I in big fat denial about that setback. So the reason I share this with you guys is because I think it's important to recognize there's certain ways that, when we're talking about the injury experience and how we look at stress and how we react to stress, there's some things that can happen that are true for people across the board, that are very typical sort of responses, that are very normal responses. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this with you guys is here I am, kind of a subject matter expert in exactly what I'm going through. And yet, that's still something that, even though I have that expertise, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel that in terms of my own emotions around being injured, or in this case, around dealing with a setback. So that it's really normal to go through these things. And the important thing to think about is, can I catch it and recognize it when it's happening and then do something about it? So when you're dealing with a setback, it can just feel very, it can feel like a disappointment, and it can feel like it can feel dejecting when you feel like I've gone, 2 steps or 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or even, just going 1 step back can feel defeating when you're excited about getting back into it. So really one of the, kind of important things to do is to, is get to that place where you can accept, all right, I'm dealing with a setback. It's okay. It's a part of the process. Like sometimes going into it knowing there's a chance you're going to have a setback, and having a plan in place of what you'll do in case you encounter that, so how you want to how you'll respond, which is not something that I did. And so having that in place will help. You're basically planning your behavior. So you're thinking through, well, what are the challenges I might face during my injury recovery? One of the challenges I might face is encountering a setback. Okay, if that happens, how do I want to feel in that situation? What do I need to do in order to maintain my confidence and resilience in that situation? So thinking about that ahead of time can really help through, with that process. The other interesting thing with this idea of sort of the denial piece that I wanted to share is that sometimes, this might resonate with some people, depending on your injury and depending on the setback and depending on whether or not you're working towards a particular event, or you're in the middle of your season, or if you're in your off season. So right now, because I had the setback, I just stopped everything. I'm not training for anything in particular, but I was pretty dejected. I was pretty bummed about it, and just kind of sat in that for a while, and then really wasn't taking care of it and didn't do anything about it. And part of that is sometimes when you have a setback and you don't feel like it's actually holding you back from doing the things that you want to do, you might not do what you need to in order to take care of it. You might kind of stay in that denial or for a while because of that. So something has to become unacceptable before you make any strides towards changing it, right? So for that amount of time, it was still acceptable to not use my arm. It's not until you get to the point where this is no longer acceptable, I need to do something about it, that then you can feel a shift. So partly, coming to accept that this is really happening will help you get to that point where you recognize, like, this isn't what I want. This isn't acceptable. I need to do I need to take care of it so that I can do what I want to do. So that's an interesting sort of part of this conversation as well. So, so dealing with setbacks, a lot of, make sure you're reaching out. This is part of all of this, is make sure that you're reaching out for support, talking to your athletic trainer and understanding, well, what is this setback and what does this mean? And, what should I be doing now and where should I be backing off? And still making sure that you shift your focus to what you can do instead of just staying stuck in that upset of like what this means for what you can't do, which can be really, really challenging. So, one of the other things I saw in the Facebook group, I saw Winning Wednesdays today, right? So we're sharing our wins, and Jasmine had shared that she's not feeling any wins right now and just feeling totally defeated. So I wanted to speak to that in particular as well, or because I think it also connects to this idea of dealing with setbacks in a similar way, and what to do when you're in that space of just like defeat and really feeling that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then as you guys jump in and have questions, definitely put your questions here in the comment box, and we'll get to any questions that you guys have. Oh, yay, Jasmine, you're here. Yeah. So Jasmine, if you have any questions or if you want to share in the comment box, like what's going on for you a little bit, and I can address that in particular, but I can, also just like talk about, what do you do when you're in that place of just like, you just defeated, right? So I'm not sure what's going on. So yeah, if you give me a little bit about what's going on, I'm gonna, if I had to, make the assumption is that, that there's been a setback. Sometimes when I see that, when an athlete's completely defeated in this place of, in injury, it's you've hit a setback and things were progressing and now they've gone back to where you feel like you're square one. Sometimes they feel that when they're not able to get a diagnosis. So trying to figure out what's going on and nobody's able to tell them what's happening. So in these places of just feeling defeated, there's a couple things that are helpful to do. One is really making sure that you're reaching out for support and for that kind of emotional support. So having someone that you can just be able to articulate the emotions that you're actually feeling in that moment. So one of the things that can happen is when we're not really acknowledging like the deep sort of grief that's there, or whatever the emotion is, like the anger, the confusion, but just really making sure that you're able to label and like touch each one of those emotions. And sometimes the way to do that is being able to talk to someone about it and just be like, I need to talk to someone about this. Like, I just am tired. I'm tired and I feel defeated and I don't want to do this anymore. And I just want to be better. And I'm feeling frustrated because of this. And I'm feeling confused because of this. So really like honing in on each specific emotion that you're having can be a really important part of that process. And then the other thing is it possible for me to then figure out, okay, I can be in this place and accept that these are the things I cannot do right now, but what can I do? And shift your focus there. Because when you do that, you're taking action. And one of the things we find with injured athletes is when you are able to shift your focus to something that's in your control and take action on something, it helps us feel better to be able to do that. So, so let's see. Jasmine says, to be honest, it is kind of strange, but I've just taken my break from training and all kinds of problems have cropped up. I have a hip problem right now that just seems to be something that may be an SI joint, but no one is totally sure. So things are uncomfortable. Of course, I've lost fitness, and yet I also got sick, and I seem to be really slow with a very high heart rate. Okay. Oh, yeah. So part of it too is, is reaching out for some support to see it's hard sometimes when you have multiple things going on to tease out, like, are all these things connected or maybe they're not? So like, is the really slow with a very high heart rate mean you're fighting off getting sick, or does it have something to do with like, it's just the loss of fitness? So sometimes we assume that everything has to do with the injury and maybe it doesn't. So kind of teasing it out and getting more information can sometimes feel empowering as well. But the other thing in your situation, Jasmine, that might be coming up is it can also be really hard. That's one of the things that I hear from my injured athletes is one of the factors that's challenging is feeling upset or defeated because of the loss of fitness that occurs during this time. So one of the things that might be helpful too is to just keep reminding yourself, like, that's going to come. Your fitness is going to come back, but your primary goal right now is to make sure that your body is healthy and healed, right? So for an example, when I finally made the shift around my injury with my arm, I realized my training plan. So if I'm going to get ready for snowboarding season, the first thing on my training plan needs to be taking care of my arm. And that comes before any other type of fitness and building my fitness. So when we're just, and the reason I share that is when we're just focused on, like if I just stay focused on, I need to get my endurance up and I need to get my strength in order to do what I want to do in the snowboarding season. And right now I can't do that because of my arm. If we just stay there, we'll get stuck and not make any movement, instead of like, okay, first thing on my training plan is I gotta get back healthy with this arm. So for you, since it seems like I'm reading your post again, that no one's really sure about what's happening, so things are uncomfortable. Is it possible that you need to get a second opinion from maybe a different type of practitioner, or really, because I know that can be challenging sometimes too, and people have brought that up in the group, like it can be hard sometimes to spend the money on these different things when you don't know if it's going to work, but seeing it as like, this is something that's for your health and wellness, and that it might, even if it doesn't give you answers, that might be more information, if that makes sense. Let's see. Oh, we've got a call. I'm dealing with some pretty big hormone problems, but they are not typical. Okay. So I'm trying to deal with that, and it's causing a lot of emotional. Yes, that's a really good thing to remind yourself of. So things might feel heightened because of that. And to just like, you might need to just remind yourself of that. And then oh my gosh, yes, you have so much going on. So here's one of the, kind of important things for you also. And this is true for anybody that's, in this situation when you're injured, and maybe that's just a part of this, your bigger picture of all these things that are happening, is to really think about being more intentional and deliberate on balancing out the amount of stress that you have with recovery, so to speak. So what I mean is really thinking about how can I do things that both help me manage stress with relaxation and kind of engaging your relaxation response, as well as how can I do things that deliberately bring me joy, so that you're really like you've got high stress, a lot of stuff going on. And it's tough because these are the times that we typically, our self-care just completely falls off. And then sometimes it can feel like also if your part of your self-care was working out and you can't do that, you sometimes will just swing on a pendulum and be like, well, if I can't do the one thing that I want to do, and you're in that feeling of defeat, then I'm not going to do anything. So really thinking about, one of the things I'll have people do is like, you can write out 2 different lists of like activities that are both relaxing or bring you joy, right? So, and one list will be, here are things that only take 5 to 10 minutes. And then another list of, here are things that are like 30 minutes or more. And so those lists, it might be, I've seen all kinds of different things on the list. Like, it might be, calling a really good friend that you haven't talked to in a while. It might be taking a bath. It might be, reading a chapter in a book that you really enjoy, so whatever those lists are, but, not censoring it all, just like brainstorming, what are the lists? And then each week choosing like at least 3 on the 5 to 10 minute and 2 on the 30 minute, whatever you feel like is realistic, but actually setting a specific goal with it during this time. Might feel silly to have to set a specific goal, but it's important to do that piece because times of high stress are the times that we tend to not do anything. So, making sure that you're taking care of yourself in that way and doing things that, you know, checking out the Headspace or the Insight Timer app and doing one of the meditations on there that's, you know, you could do a 5-minute or 10-minute meditation, and really knowing that those things, you know, not only are helpful for your immune system, which is probably depressed when you're under, you know, meaning like your immune system, stress can affect your immune system. And so when you have a high amount of stress, your immune system is down, which not only can, you know, contribute to you getting sick, but it also can contribute to a slower healing process. So just thinking about like, what are the things I can do for myself right now, even though I don't know what's happening with my body. I can't work out the way that I want to, but what are the things that I can do, and really shift your focus there. So one of the mantras that we use in Injured Athletes Club is, if you want to go far, you have to go far, right? So FAR is an acronym for feel, accept, recover. So you got to feel your feelings right now with this place that you're in and touch on all those feelings. And you have to do that before you can accept, all right, this is where I am. This is where things are right now. And then once you are able to do that, that's when you can look at, all right, what do I need to do in order to move through this? So I just thought it's been a shit show. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like, this is an important piece to address as well, that, because I've heard this come up before, where, athletes almost feeling like, feeling badly for being for making their athletic life something that prominent or important to them, and sometimes feeling guilty around that as well. And for people who experience the world using their body, and their health and wellness is an important part of not only their identity, but their stress management. Your athletics are a part of your self-care, and it's okay. It's okay to have a prominent place on your pie chart. What I mean is, I was working with an athlete today. We're talking about, if you think about all the different things that that are a part of your life, and you had to put it in a pie chart, and there's different percentages for all of these different things. And so for him in particular, we were talking about his training, as well as things that he's working on for his business and building his business. And there are all these different things he needs to put energy into in that pie chart. Your athletics are a part of that pie chart. It's okay to spend energy there, especially when it feeds you. So, I mean, I understand that feeling of like, feeling like the athletics are just selfish, but they're not. It's, it's okay to have things in your life that bring you joy. That's meant to be a part of our lived experience, is experiencing joy. And so if your athletics are part of that, it's okay to have that, and you don't have to feel badly about that. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, Jasmine, I'm so sorry you're going through that. And one last thing, to think about too, with that idea of like processing feelings, and we, talked about like, is there anyone you could reach out to talk about with, but, also writing out, can help with the touching the feelings. And even if it's just, if you're, a lot of times I'll suggest writing to people, and they're like, I want a journal. They don't even like saying the word. I have one of an athlete I'm working with where we had to come up with a different name for it because she didn't want to call it journaling. So, if that is something that you do and you just got away from it, bring it back into the mix right now. And it's okay. People say like, well, it seems like I only do it when I'm upset about something. That's okay. That's a really powerful use of it. But if you don't like it, you do it a little bit differently, where maybe you write, pretend like you're writing a letter to someone and telling them everything that you're going through. Or just, you can write it on a piece of paper, and then you can shred it in a paper shredder or burn it or whatever. Like, it's not even, you don't even need to, what you do with it next doesn't necessarily matter. It's the process of writing can help you process the emotions, basically. It's just like a way to it's a tool. It's a tool to help them move through you, right? So just like, I don't know, icing is a tool to reduce inflammation, journaling or logging or whatever you call it, is a tool to reduce emotional turmoil when you have a lot going on. So I would, I would definitely suggest that as well. Let's see. Cindy says, what Carrie's saying is making so much sense. I have had that feeling before too. But for many of us, sport is who we are. Yep. The stress management aspects goes beyond what some would think of it. Yeah. Like exercise to blow off steam or whatever. Accomplishing our goals gives us the strength to face other things, which of course is why, yes, it's so challenging to be injured on top of everything else. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's, it's meaningful. Yeah. I mean, such a great point, Cindy. Like if you feel like your sport is something that adds to your life, and it makes you feel proud of the things that you are able to do, and it gives you a venue for being able to accomplish things that you never thought that you could and feed that part of you, it's not selfish. It's an important part of what you do. It's just like, for somebody that's a musician and they spend their time, playing guitar or, what are doing whatever, or for somebody that likes to paint and they spend time doing that. Like if you just look at those things, technically you could probably define them as selfish acts because they're things that are feeding your soul. That I don't know. I don't see it as selfish. But it's easy to do that. And we all do that, right? Like that, especially in light of like when you step back and shift your perspective, sometimes it can feel like that. I've had other athletes that I've worked with over the years that, other big things happen in their life. And it does make them take stock of like, why am I even doing this? And what does this really mean? So it's an important thing to define because of that, like what it does mean to you to be able to use your body. And like Cindy said, it's not, it's different for everybody and not everybody gets that, which I think is one of the reasons we did the Injured Athletes Club, is because I think the people who are here get that it's when sport is a meaningful part of your life, or even just like using your body as a meaningful part of your life, and you can't do that, it's hard, and it sucks. Right? But I know we didn't get to talk about it a little much, but it's also that idea that I talked about in the very beginning of, is it possible to actually see this as a blessing instead of a curse? That when you step back and look at the bigger picture of your life, not only just like stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of your athletic life, but just stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of life in general, like there's just going to be times where you're going to be faced with challenges, whether and this is just one type of challenge. And so thinking about, this is challenging right now, but it's just my turn to deal with this and to be injured. And what can I gain from it? Like, what can I take from this experience that's going to contribute to my growth, right? So that idea of like, can you grow through trauma? And I always say growth doesn't come without growing pains, right? So just like if you're a kid and you get growing pains, once you get through that, you're at a different place. You've grown, you're at a different height. So same thing sort of emotionally, right? Is like you can't, the growing pains contribute to having something greater on the other end. So really thinking about like, sometimes when we think about that, it provides this like opening of like, okay, I would not prefer to be going through this right now, but I am going through this right now. So what can I gain from this experience? And sometimes seeing it that way can be a bit of a shift as well. Oh yeah. So I reiterate what Cindy says here. I'm really sorry to hear you're going through that, all of that stuff at the same time, but make sure you're reaching out for support. You're feeling your feelings. Do a little logging or journaling, because sometimes that might help, and really think about, how can I feed that relaxation response, and really deliberately think about stress management in a proactive way, because you're under a high amount of stress. And thinking about like the big things that can contribute to stress? You know, and are those things in place? So like sleeping, reaching out for support, you know, there's some things that are like big factors, and then doing those lists so that you have like, here are things that bring me joy, and it's okay for me to deliberately do some things right now that bring me joy. That's my homework for you. Go do things that bring you joy. And I'll do a little of that too as I deal with my own frustrations with having a little setback, right? It's important to do. Yeah, so I'm so glad you could be here. Thanks for being on the live Q&A session. Hopefully, I know other people are going to resonate with the things that you asked here and with what we talked about. So, you know, it's really, not only is it powerful for you guys to, you know, come to the live Q&A and let us know what questions you have for your own benefit, but it really does benefit other people as well, because I guarantee you, whatever it is you're going through, someone else in this group has gone through it too, or is in the middle of going through it. So speaking of that, welcome. I should have started with this. Well, welcome to the people that just joined the Injured Athletes Club group. We're glad to have you here. We're sorry you're here, but we're glad that you're here. So welcome to the group. And at any point, if anyone ever has any questions about, you know, here's what's going on for me right now, you know, pop those questions in the group and we'll start, you know, and we can answer questions that way as well. But we hope to see you next month at the live Q&A. Hope you guys all have a fantastic month, and keep interacting and supporting each other in the Injured Athletes Club group. And we'll see you in December. Bye, everyone.